All right, welcome to Breathing Underwater's Musicast. This is episode 18, and I have with me some very special guests from the tropical paradise that is Maui, Hawaii, coming on the heels of my last episode featuring only Maui artists. I thought it would be interesting to get the youth perspective on music nowadays, especially a perspective coming from a very unique place, as I gave insight to in the last episode. Anyway, so I especially wanted to get a youth perspective on the show because I realized that it's been mainly people in their mid to late 20s ranting and raving about music, but though they are not the only consumers of music. So anyway, on the line I have with me, all the way from Maui, Hawaii, I have Lily and Mika. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Lily and Mika are actually two former students of mine when I taught out in Maui. And not only were they students at the school I was teaching at, but they were also, Lily was a drum student of mine, and she and Mika were in a band together that I helped oversee. So we have a history, especially in the area of music. Oh, and they were also big supporters of the band that I was in out in Maui called the Mobius Project, and I appreciate that, guys. Thank you. Let's talk about, before we get into the music part of things, let's talk about just being a kid. Well, let's just talk about you guys a little bit, because from my perspective, when I was growing up, I grew up on the East Coast, on the mainland. I knew absolutely nothing about Hawaii whatsoever. I didn't even know how many islands there were, let alone that there was one called Maui. And music was always something that came pretty readily available, especially live music, because I always lived near urban hubs, places where bands would tour constantly. And I went to big schools that had lots of people with different interests, and I learned about music in a lot of different ways and through a lot of different people. And I feel like I got a pretty good kind of sense of what's out there and what's available, and my parents are musicians and stuff like that. So when I moved to Maui, I had no idea what to expect from like the culture and the way that people discover music and consume it and everything. Just in general, I just want to get an idea of what it's like, growing up on Maui, because I didn't grow up there. So first of all, Lily, tell me, were you born on Maui, or did you move there?
No, I was born in San Diego, California, and I moved to Maui when I was 4.
Okay. So at that point, you weren't like really developing a lot of personal interest yet. So for like all intents and purposes, we could say that you grew up on Maui. And then Micah, were you born on the mainland?
I was actually born in San Diego, California as well, but my parents moved here with me when I was 2 months old, so.
So yeah, again, you grew up on Maui then. I mean, I don't know if you guys have a context, like if you have a lot of friends that on the mainland and the people you can compare lives to, but I mean, what's it like growing up on an island, especially like a little tiny island with smaller schools, and if you even realize that that's the case. I mean, I don't know if, like the school I went to was considered small, but it had like 1,200 kids or something, or 1,500 kids in it, and that was considered pretty small. But you guys go to school with what, like less than 500? Lily, what was it like growing up on Maui in general? What's your impression, and do you have any kind of context for what it was like for kids like me growing up on the mainland?
Well, my mom grew up on the mainland, and like from what I've heard, schools were humongous, and like just comparing like sizes of yearbooks that I've seen from the mainland and then our little paperback yearbooks here, it's just a lot bigger on the mainland. There's a lot more to do, and you like to go somewhere, it takes a lot longer. Like here on this island, it takes like 3 hours to get to Hana, and that's like as far as you can go. And then you can turn around and it'll take like 3 hours to get to the other side. And if you need to go to Kahului, it takes like 20 minutes. So everything's kind of close together, and you see a lot of people that you know.
Micah, what would you say?
I would say like almost the exactly same thing. I mean, I feel it kind of sucks because we don't get offered as many classes as they get because we have such small schools. But I mean, dude, we go to a really small school. All the schools here are really small, and compared like to the mainland, everyone there is just like
totally, they get more music opportunities because there's always like Bamboozled and like all these good tours and stuff, and we get nothing, so it kind of sucks. I like going to the mainland.
Do you feel like you've been kind of, I don't want to say cheated, but like you don't have the same kind of opportunities, not just for music, but just other, just growing up in general, that people on the mainland do?
Yeah, definitely.
It's funny because like on my perspective, like I feel like I would have loved growing out there because a lot of my and kids I knew and my friends and things, a lot of the things that the drama that we had was because everything was so big and things were so far, and you're always like going on, you're being like dragged around by your parents and going on long road trips to visit family, and and like you're in big high schools and you feel so isolated and all that kind of stuff. And I always wanted Maui. To me actually felt like it would be more like growing up in a small town, which is something my mom did, and she still kind of feels, she idealizes that. She compares life a lot to the small town, and so I find that interesting because when I moved there, it kind of changed my perspective on like what life could be like. But I guess when you only live in one place and you only kind of know one thing, then you don't have that perspective. So I hear what you guys are saying. Okay, so last thing before we get to more specific about music, what kind of stuff do you guys like to do other than music? What do kids do on Maui?
There's the beach, which I don't really like all that much, but a lot of people like the beach. And there's like 2 malls that you can go to. There's a lot of, you can camp. Camping's awesome. There's not a ton.
Micah?
Yeah. There's, I'm like a water child. I love going to the beach and stuff. I think there are also really good, a lot of photo opportunities here. Like, you can get really good photography, and it's pretty good for skateboarding and, surfing. I like to roller skate everywhere.
All right, well, let's talk about music then. Every time I have a guest on the show, I like to get like their top 5 bands or artists or albums, even, because sometimes people like a song or an album by a band that they may not necessarily like the band as much or something. So just like, what's your top 5 music related things? Micah, you can do that one first.
My Chemical Romance, that must be my number 1 right there. They're my favorite band. I really love Black Flag. I like The Clash. I love Rob Zombie and Slipknot, I have to say.
Lily, your turn.
Oh, gosh, there are so many to choose from.
No.
I have 3. There's Taking Back Sunday, Wolf Mother, Paramore, definitely, Cage the Elephant, and Modest Mouse. There.
Well, it's very diverse. I was curious, Micah, like how you knew about Black Flag and stuff.
I grew up with my mom and my dad, obviously, and they're both like hardcore San Diego punk rockers. I grew up under the influence of Black Flag and, Rob Zombie.
So you guys were mentioning before about like feeling like there's not a lot to do on Maui, especially like socially and like, well, in terms of entertainment. And like I said, when I was growing up, it was super easy to go to concerts, even like before I could drive, because I always had a friend with a parent that would go, or my parents were gracious enough sometimes to take us and drop us off at clubs and things. Always bands coming through. I mean, I must have seen several, well, I'd say maybe like a dozen or more shows a year on a national level, like bands that would come through national tours. And then there was a local scene that I got a part of, especially when I started playing in bands in high school. So I was always like going to shows or playing shows. And I guess you guys feel like that's not quite the case, right?
No.
But you have gone to some shows despite that.
I saw my Chem live, but we had to fly to Portland to see them, so.
And when was that?
That was a year ago, last year. They played a lot of some of their older albums. They did 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge and Welcome to the Black Parade, so that was good.
Was that your first big show?
Yeah, that was my first big show. It wasn't actually that big. It was a venue of like 200. I was 4 people away from Gerard Way. And he looked into my eyes, actually. I'm going to say this. It's true. My mom saw. She stared into my eyes.
Wow.
30 seconds. It was so amazing.
How did you get tickets to such a tiny show so far away?
I, got them, a few months before.
Okay.
And they were, almost $120 a piece.
Oh, okay.
It was, it was for my birthday and Christmas, and me and my mom both have a big obsession with them, so we were like, oh yeah, we're going.
How did you feel, that like your first big show being a band that you really loved was, what kind of experience was that for you?
Oh my gosh, that was like the best day of my life ending. But I don't know, I just think that was so amazing that I got the chance to do that, and it was like really overwhelming. It's kind of gnarly to see all these like weird goth chicks pushing me around, but it was fun. I got in the middle of the mosh pit somehow. That was crazy.
That make you want to go back to more concerts?
Oh, definitely.
Have you been to any more?
I went to a Mickey Avalon concert. I don't know if you know who that is.
I don't think so.
He's like a rapper, but yeah, I saw him live in concert, and I did a meet and greet with him. He's pretty creepy, actually, I have to say.
Okay.
Very creepy. But yeah, that was fun. I know. I love concerts.
Lily, who have you seen?
Paramore. And Hello Goodbye opened for them.
Was that like your first big show?
That was my, one and only big show.
Oh, for me, the Neon Trees opened, and now they're like all big hit, and I was like, oh yeah, I saw them when they were starting out.
Actually, Micah, I saw My Chemical Romance when they were opening up for another band when they were just starting out. So.
Oh, that's not fair.
It's not a matter of fair. It's just.
You know what? My mom saw Nirvana live.
Oh, be quiet. All right.
That's one of my favorite bands.
I don't want to talk about that now. That's not fair.
I know it's not fair.
Anyway, so Lily, tell me about the Paramore show.
It was really, really small. It was like the waterfront at the Aloha Tower, and it was a super, super tiny venue, but a lot of people. And there was like a giant clock tower in the way, so there were people behind the clock tower, and you could still hear fine, and you could see Hayley Williams' red hair from like 2 miles away.
Where were you?
I was in the middle, all the way at the edge. Like, there was a giant mob in the front, and then there were like people wandering around in the back, and they had like gates separating the alcoholic part, and then like under 21. And there were a bunch of people that would like carry out people that had passed out in the middle, and they'd like push through people and like throw them over the gate. And it was kind of scary because there were like a bunch of people, like they do this thing where they like violently move from one side to another to create like a wave thing, but I was like pushed up against like the gate, and it was very painful. But it was really cool because it was super loud and awesome, and you could see everything perfectly. And at the end, when everyone was leaving, Kayla got trampled, and she was on the ground for a few seconds.
Is she okay?
Yeah, she was fine.
Okay.
She was scared.
There were reports of like kids getting killed by being trampled at shows when I was a kid, like Smashing Pumpkins. I remember somebody got killed. But did seeing Paramore make you want to like go to more shows?
Yes.
Well, I hope you can someday. Well, okay, so that kind of segues into what I was thinking of a second ago about parents and like growing up in a musical mindset and things. And so, Micah, you've already said that your parents are very not just into music, but into like similar music as you. That's cool. And Lily, what about you? Are your parents into music?
Yeah, my mom was a giant Metallica fan when she was younger, and she still likes them, and she likes a lot of music. She'll listen to anything, really. And my dad is kind of like how Micah's parents are. Like, one of my earliest memories would be driving. My dad had a Jeep Commando, and he still does, and he would drive me around in it in the morning every Sunday, and he'd, like, blast White Zombie and, like, Black Sabbath. It was pretty awesome.
That's the kind of parent that I plan to be.
Yeah.
Yay.
A few days ago, he was blasting Lamb of God while cleaning motorcycles.
Really?
It was very, very manly.
Gotcha.
It was at night, too, so it was like around 9, and there was like heavy metal coming from my house.
You know, Lamb of God's from Richmond, where I live now, right?
They're pretty cool.
For me, growing up, my parents they're classical musicians. They didn't listen to rock music. That was kind of like a thing, you know, growing up. Music felt for my friends and I and other people that I knew that, you know, like a source of rebellion. You know, my parents were so lame because they didn't, you know, listen to this stuff, and it hurt their ears and things. So, you know, we would blast Nirvana and stuff like that. Do you guys feel that kind of angst like against your parents at all, or are you guys kind of more influenced by them and interested in what they're interested in?
Oh no, I'm totally interested in what both of my parents do, like, and what they listen to. It's just so awesome. I think it's great because we can like sit in the car and listen to music that we both like.
Lily, do you feel like that?
It's pretty much the same thing. My dad makes fun of the newer music I listen to, but it's not like Lamb of God or White Zombie. He'll make fun of me for it, but I don't really care. I know he's joking.
Because your dad likes to tease you anyway. But I guarantee that like somewhere deep down he's actually really happy that you listen to that and not like I don't know, something, because at least it's related to it's like the bands that he likes influenced bands that you like for sure. So there's that connection there. Whereas like my parents, like nothing I listened to was ever influenced by John Denver. So since you guys, unlike me and my brother and my friends and things, where we didn't feel as like connected with our families, we felt more like rebellious against their tastes and their mindsets and stuff. And that was a big influence about like the kind of music that we got into that tended to be more on the aggressive side and more on the abrasive side. Why do you guys feel like you got into the music that you did, and what like can you remember back when you were first getting into music and like what it was that kind of influenced your tastes? Lily, you can go first.
Definitely Friends. And I don't even know what kind of music I was into when I was little. It was probably like Jesse McCartney and High School Musical and that kind of stuff. I remember I was into High School Musical for like a month, and then I was like, okay, this is enough. I don't like this anymore. And I don't know, my music taste has stayed the same kind of, but also changed.
I mean, like, how do you feel like your music interest has evolved over time?
Because like in 8th grade, I was into like super, like not, like screamo, like The Devil Wears Prada and stuff like that. And now I'm like,
I remember.
I don't really like that anymore. But I also like go back to music that I used to listen to when I was younger. Like I used to listen to the Gorillaz a lot when I was little, and I listen to them still. And Green Day, I listened to a lot of Green Day when I was like 8 years old, and I still listen to them occasionally. But I've gotten over a lot of stuff.
Do you feel like you listen to less aggressive music now?
No, it's a little bit of both. It depends on the mood I'm in. If I'm angry, I will listen to very, very aggressive music.
All right, so Micah, same question.
I probably, my cousin Beth really influenced my musical taste because I started following after him into more aggressive music because I looked up to him. And I don't know, I think that kind of set off my Chemical Romance obsession. So,
I mean, obviously you've been into MCR since I've known you, but do you feel like otherwise your musical interests have changed or evolved or what have you?
I think I've been getting actually more into some more old school stuff, like more of the Sex Pistols and more into the Clash, London's Calling, and that kind of stuff. But I'm still listening to, my good old aggressive music, so.
Are you interested in some of the older school stuff because of that you see like how it influenced stuff that you were into first?
Yeah, a little bit. I think, I don't know, I just kind of see like, oh, look at it, this is what influenced my dad, and oh, it's actually really good, so I like it too, I guess. Related
to this, let's talk about why it's important to you and what it does for you. And I'll give you an example. For me, growing up, what first got me into music was friends, and people that I looked up to. I thought they were really cool, and I was wondering what they listened to and why they dressed the way they did, and it was all related to music. But then after that, it was definitely like a friend thing. We all got into music together, and my brother and other friends, but then like the types of music that I started listening to, because I first started listening to what was really cool at the time, which was like kind of post grunge and alternative. So like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, STP, and all that kind of stuff. It was really big on the radio at the time. But then once I really started to your mom, Lily, I discovered Metallica, and then I realized that I really liked heavy music. And then, it kind of went on from there. And then the heavier music I got into, the more like emotionally connected I got with it. So then, being a teenager and feeling like kind of, my life was out of my own control, and I hated school and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I really connected with the anger and the angst of the music that I was listening to at the time, and it really like kind of helped me get through a lot of stuff that felt like dark times and hard times as a kid. Do you guys have any kind of relation to music like that? Do you feel like it's like an emotional place to go and get comfort and feel like like somebody understands you, or is it much more of like an enjoyment thing, or it's just something that you enjoy casually?
I would definitely say I have a really strong emotional attachment to a few bands like Nirvana and My Chem. I think they really helped me kind of move on away just from all these deaths that occurred in my family very like around the same time. So
Okay.
I just feel like it helped me move on with that.
Lily?
A little bit of, well, actually a lot of emotional. When I'm like having a really hard time and something big has happened, that's all I do. I just sit on my computer and I listen to music for hours on end until my mom forces me to get off of my computer. When I just go out of my room for a few minutes and then I go back in. But it really helps me deal and cope with things because I get emotional really easily. It's like things hit me hard kind of sometimes, and music helps me deal with it. It helps me like forget about all my problems kind of.
Totally. I get that. But let's talk about your guys' experience about being in a band and playing music live. So, first of all, my question is, did I'm assuming the answer is yes, but just to make sure, when you guys decided that you wanted to play instruments, was that because you enjoyed the music that you listened to so much? Or in other words, why did you want to start playing the drums and the bass?
It was actually something I was kind of forced into in a way. After like the first day, I kind of just fell in love with it. So it was kind of like not really a thing where I was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I did have a phase where I wanted to be just like Mikey Way, so.
Lily, what's your take on it?
I really like the music and trying to like make myself listen to the drum beats of songs. Because before I didn't even notice it, but then when I started noticing it, I thought it sounded really cool, and I thought it was super awesome to play drums.
Had you considered other instruments first?
Yeah. I played guitar for 3 years before, but I hated it. My
That's
mom
right.
forced me to, and I was like, this is awful. And I also wanted to play violin, but drums was a lot cooler.
I played violin first. When I knew you guys, you were both kind of starting out, and Lily, you took lessons from me, for better or for worse. And then you guys decided that you wanted to start a band, and after like a few tries with different people, I think you had a little something going there, and you guys would come over and use the Mobius equipment, and that was a lot of fun for me because I had never really overseen a band before. I'd always kind of been in it. How was that experience for you guys? And just give me some of your takeaways before I ask you more specific questions. Lily, what were some of your takeaways from that?
Well, for a project that I'm doing right now, I'm in a band, and I have sort of takeaways where I already knew, like, the basics, like how to keep time. So it was like, I was the only one that was kind of on time the whole time, and everyone else was, like, trying to be on time. And it was very, very difficult. But I remember I took some skills that I learned from being in that little band thing and applied them to my situation that I'm in now.
Well, so tell me about this band real quick. What does everybody play?
We're just like random covers right now, and it's mostly just for the project.
For what project? For school?
Yeah, project fundamentals class.
What is it? What's the project? Like, are you guys? Is it about making music, or are you making music for something else?
We're just making music and forming a band. That's just the project.
Okay, so who plays what?
I play the drums, obviously. Eric plays keyboard. He's a freaking keyboard master. It's
Really?
insane. He can play Through the Fire and Flames. You know that song by Dragon Force?
I don't know it specifically, but I know Dragon Force, so.
He can play it on the piano, and it sounds really amazing. Jordan sings. Raimi plays guitar, and so does Quentin. We don't have a bassist, and Eric just plays the bass on his keyboard.
Micah, they need a bassist. What are you doing?
I'm still playing bass, and I think that the band experience that we were in was awesome because, I don't know, one of the main things I got with that is that you really have to be able to work with others well. Like, I don't know, you just have to learn to accept people I guess you just have to kind of learn to live with your band members, but you should also be friends with them, because if you're not friends with your band members, then that's like, you're not going to make good music, guaranteed, right there.
Have you been in any bands since that?
Well, it's not official bands, but me and my dad, we play together with his band. Like, sometimes I play with their band. And
What does your dad play?
my dad plays guitar and he sings, and he's been doing that his whole entire life.
That's kind of awesome.
He also plays bass, and he also plays drums. So he's kind of a one-man band.
Did your guys' experience playing music, has that had any impact on your interest in music?
Kind of, because I searched up a lot of songs, like, to learn how to play, and that kind of, like, opened up new doors musically for me, I guess.
Micah?
I think kind of the same thing, too. It opened a lot of doors for me as well. I started getting into more of, like, new bands, and like new really good bands too that I'd like listen to, like Blink-182, for instance. I used to not know them so well, but now I do.
How do you guys discover music now? Because like I said, when I was a kid, it was first from like people at school and friends and things, and then we had MTV and the radio, but like the internet was just starting out to be like a common thing. It really wasn't that robust, so it was mostly like informational pages, and there just wasn't a lot to discover on there when I was a kid. So it was more like word of mouth was like a big thing, and then we went to shows and we saw other bands, and people would talk about some new band that was coming up and stuff like that. So how do you guys discover most of your music now? And then also, like, how do you consume most of your music now? Do you do you stream it? Do you download? What's your main thing? Micah?
The main way I basically find music is by going over to my dad and either looking through his old record bin or word by mouth from him, like, oh, this is a good band. A lot of it also comes from Alternative Press magazine, because I have a subscription to that, and I get in a lot of good bands. And then I'll just look them up online and see how good they really are. One main thing I do is I just buy it on my, if it's something I really like, I'll buy it on my iPhone. If it's something I'm not kind of sure about, I will buy it on CD, and I have a bunch of CDs, and I think it's actually cheaper to buy CDs and then burn them onto iTunes. That's what I prefer to do. So,
where do you find CDs on Maui?
I steal them from my father because, but it's also just cheaper to find used CDs on eBay and ship them over. So,
do you guys ever go to Requests in Wailuku?
Mm-mm.
Of what? I've heard of it. Wait, what is it called? Because I think I might have gotten it.
Request Music. It's on Main Street, I think.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there with my dad.
Okay, that's to me, like, because the way that I consume music when I was younger was CDs, and we had stores like that all over the place. In my region, they were called record and tape traders, but there's tons of like these stores that sold new stuff and used stuff, and you could bring in your stuff and trade it for other stuff, and it was awesome, and it was like I don't know if you guys ever seen the movie called Empire Records, and there's other movies like that where like people just kind of hang out at CD stores. Like, that's totally how, I mean, it wasn't like that, movie like, but I mean, we would hang out with our friends, and people wanted to work at CD stores just so they could get a discount, And I kind of worked at a CD store when I was younger. It was Circuit City. It was kind of more like a Best Buy, but it was, I was still like getting cheaper music and stuff, and it was all about, I used all my money that I earned there just so I could pay to like have a car so I could go to shows and buy more music. So, but you guys got to go to Request, because it's like the coolest store ever, because they have tons and tons of used stuff, and it's like super cheap. It's awesome.
I like the mainland, because on the mainland you got all these record stores in Portland, and so cheap.
Yeah, but they're going away. I mean, because of the online aspect, like music stores are on their way out for sure. It's kind of sad. Anyway, so Lily, same double question. Like, how do you discover music, and what's your main like way to get it and listen to it?
Pandora. I discovered tons of music on Pandora, and also YouTube, and through friends, and also and the radio sometimes. How I get my music and download it.
Just in general, what I don't know. What do you want to tell? What do you want to tell the world about being young, being a music fan, do you have any advice for maybe like kids that are coming up below you that are thinking about playing music, or like what music to get into, and like, you know, any pitfalls they should avoid? What do you want to tell the world?
If you're thinking about playing an instrument, make sure you're really into it before you invest a lot of money into it, and then also stick with it. Yeah, even if you get bored with it, you still gotta stick with it.
Do you guys think that people get bored with instruments initially because they're not good at it right away?
Yeah, discouraged really easily, because there's a lot of people on YouTube that have like tutorials on how to play things and covers, and you see them and they're like freaking awesome, and then you're just like starting out and not as awesome as they are, and you kind of get really discouraged very fast. And you're like, oh well, I suck, so what's the point? But you have to get out of that mindset and just think that you're starting out and it's okay to suck.
Yeah, the way I always looked at it was like, if everybody that was really good right now were the only people playing and there was nobody else learning, then it would stop. Like there would be no new music and no new musicians. So it's like, it's hard, it's a challenge, but you know, you gotta. And also like the music purists. I don't know if you guys have met anybody like this, but people that think that like music of blah 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 generation was the best, and now it's like on a decline, and music's, you know, nobody's gonna care about rock music next week or something like that. Do you guys know anybody like that?
Like, well, no, I don't know anyone like that, but I mean, reading YouTube comments, it gets really irritating. People are like, oh, I'm here, One Direction sucks, oh, everything's declining, this is music, not the crap that the kids are listening to these days. And it's like, well, whatever, they're trying to make money, and that's kind of what music is coming to. But, I mean, there's like still good new artists. It's not like everything's crap.
For sure. Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that gets lost sometimes where people, you know, and I mean, I remember being young and that feeling like, well, everything's already been done, so why should I do it now? Or, you know, like, I'm not good now, so why keep going? But yeah, I agree with you. Like, there's never gonna, if everybody felt like that, then there would be nothing new, and it would just, you know, fade away. So, Micah, do you have any parting thoughts?
I would say there needs to be new punk bands coming out, because it's kind of sad how there's no new like name of punk rock anymore. Kind of, like, I don't know. I feel like that's one like genre that people have honestly like just stopped like trying to produce, which sucks, because I don't know. I like to see more punk rock or rock and roll, and it's like nothing's happening. There's all this like pop stuff that's coming out, and I'm like, oh, guys, do something else.
But you gotta think that could just be a phase, because even like in the 80s, there were that pop kind of stuff. So I mean, this could die down, and a new genre could come in. Like with dubstep and all this electronic music, it's just a phase. It's not going to be like this forever. There's going to be new kinds of music and new genres that are becoming popular, and punk will probably return in some other form. And I don't know, it's just ever changing. The music industry is just
I have
always
changing of all my good bands, so it'll always be okay. But yeah, I don't know. I would say definitely though, do not invest in one instrument and then just think you're going to do that forever, because that's, like, I don't know, I see a lot of people making that bad decision of, I'm going to get a drum set. They get a drum set, they play drums for, like, 2 months, and they're like, oh, I need a piano because I'm going to play piano now. It's like, I would kind of try and start off with, like, the kind of crappiest thing you can buy. I got my first bass for, like, $50 online. That's huge, so...
Yeah, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Those are very wise words, ladies. I couldn't agree more with everything you both said. And yeah, and thank you. You kind of reiterated my point early on about why I wanted to get you guys on the show, because what you were saying about punk, Micah, was something I've been feeling too. Though I by the way, I would go check out. There's a news site that you might or might not know about called punknews.org. And they Yeah, punknews.org, and it's all about, like, it's just like a news blog where they follow the happenings of punk bands and stuff. But there's a lot of there's a punk revival kind of happening, um but okay, so but my what I was you just reminded me of, though, was that I follow that site a lot, and I listen to the podcast that the guys that run that site do, and they are all my age, and it's interesting hearing them because they'll talk about new bands that are coming up, and they usually, typically, if it's not something that's like connected to, like if it's not something that they already like or they have liked before, they usually kind of write it off as like new crap. Like it's like no good because it's new, and it's just whatever the crap the kids are listening to these days. They'll say that kind of stuff a lot, and I think, I don't know, I think personally that they're wrong. I think I've always kind of felt like there's always going to be a bunch of bad pop music out there. You can look at any like snapshot of time, and there's always some pop crap that's really big, and like you said, Lily, it's a phase, and it always goes in cycles. Totally, like that's absolutely true. But I always feel like underneath it all, like, even if it's not in the mainstream, there's always really good music out there, and there's always good new music out there. It's just that it's not popular, so we don't hear about it in all the main ways that you usually hear about music. But that's the great thing about the internet now, is that we don't need, the radio and TV and even, like iTunes and stuff telling us what's good. Like, you can go figure it out yourself. And unfortunately for you guys, you don't have as much of a local scene, so it's harder to get. I was really connected with local bands that were coming up, and like a band that I would consider local still is like a band like the Throwdowns, who, like they're pretty popular now in that region, but they're still really personable. Like, you can run into them on the street, and they can connect you with other music and they try really hard to like bring up other bands with them. Like when they did the Battle of the Bands, and they had those bands that won like open for them and stuff like that. Like, that was kind of stuff that I was used to growing up, and that's how I got connected with the whole scene. So hopefully by the time you guys go off to college and things, you'll have a chance to experience that kind of thing a little bit. If you guys keep playing instruments and you want to keep continuing bands, like, I hope you guys get connected with that, because you sound like you guys could be, you could be part of that. Yeah, I feel like I should have some like clever final thing to say, but I have nothing. So I'm just gonna say thanks.
Hello.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
And aloha.
People on the mainland that are watching this.
For this week's song pick is going to be a shameless plug for my previous band, the Mobius Project, that I featured in the last episode about bands and artists on Maui. But another reason I wanted to feature the Mobius Project is because the two former students of mine that we just interviewed were big supporters of my band, and so there's a relation there. So this song is called I Want to Live Long Enough, and there's a funny story behind the recording of this song, where at the time of the recording we were only a three-piece with Jeremiah, myself, and our singer Allie, and we had been in the process of looking for a bass player, but we hadn't quite found one yet, and we were recording the songs nevertheless, and we had a mutual acquaintance, Ryan, who ended up joining the band later, and I guess you could say that the recording of the song was kind of his tryout, because he came in and just totally blew us away with the bass line that he laid down. As far as I know, it was in a take or two, and we knew that it was just a match made in heaven. So here is I Want to Live Long Enough by the Mobius Project from our first and only demo, The Process Sessions.
Blackness encroaches, whispers
main website for this podcast is bumusicast.wordpress.com. Please leave us feedback there in the comments section, or please email us at breathingunderwater1@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at breathingunder, but I'm only really going to post when we have a new episode available. Other than that, there's not going to be much other web presence for now. I'm just trying to keep things simple. So if you need to contact us, WordPress or email is probably the best bet.
All views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the persons expressing them and have no relation to the companies, artists, or bands discussed.
In addition, the participants of this podcast claim no rights or ownership of the musical media, songs, sound clips, etc. presented in this podcast, which are solely for promotional purposes. If there are any issues with any content presented in this podcast, please contact us and we'd be happy to take care of it.
So please do not sue us or be a hater.
Thanks for listening.